Hello and welcome to those joining us. You're in the Crescenta Valley Water District virtual town hall meeting. We're going to give everybody just a couple of minutes to join the meeting, and then we will get started. Thank you for being here. Got a pretty good group of attendees started. We'll give folks just a minute. I'm Justin Glover with Communications Lab, and our team is assisting Crescenta Valley Water District with community outreach, and I'll be your moderator for today's meeting. And we're going to give folks just maybe another minute or two, but in about another minute, as we're waiting for folks to join, I'd like to play a welcome video, which provides some good information on Crescenta Valley Water District and how it serves customers. And so maybe in about another 30 seconds, we could have that video getting started.
Crescenta Valley Water District, or CVWD, is located along the foothills of the San Gabriel and Verdugo Mountains, between the San Fernando and San Gabriel valleys in Los Angeles County. The district provides water distribution and sewage collection to the unincorporated communities of La Crescenta, as well as parts of the cities of La Cañada Flint Ridge and Glendale. The district serves an area of about 4 square miles and ranges in elevation from 1,200 feet to almost 3,000 feet above sea level. The customer base is primarily residential, with some light commercial accounts. The district currently provides water and sewer service to more than 8,000 accounts, representing a population of approximately 33,000. Crescenta Valley Water is a special district governed by a board of directors who reside within the district's boundaries and are elected for a 4-year term as part of the state's general election. The district has a long history of providing reliable water and wastewater services. While a lot has changed in the area since the district was founded in 1950, the district still maintains its commitment to the Crescenta Valley community. The district pumps groundwater, a local resource, from the Verdugo Basin, which is located about 200 feet below the ground surface. Water production out of the Verdugo Basin is highly dependent on replenishment from local rainfall, which may take up to 1.5 years to fully infiltrate into the basin. The district has seen a reoccurring drought over the last 15 years that has depleted this valuable local resource, requiring it to supplement its water supply with additional imported water from Foothill Municipal Water District. CVWD purchases about 50% of its water supply from Foothill Municipal Water District, which purchases water from the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, or MWD. MWD obtains imported water from Northern California, nearly 400 miles away, and from the Colorado River, about 300 miles away from the CVWD service area. The district and other water suppliers throughout Southern California face an increasing growing number of issues that directly impact CVWD's ability to provide reliable water service now and in the future. These issues include growing deferred facility maintenance and infrastructure replacement, rising imported water costs, increasing construction costs, continued drought, and climate change, expanding regulatory costs, escalating operation and energy costs. To address these issues, the district completed a strategic planning process, which established specific goals for CVWD to address these concerns today and in the future. Through vigorous planning and implementation, the district continues to move forward to accomplish its mission to its customers and stakeholders, to provide quality water and wastewater services to the Crescenta Valley community in a dependable and economically responsible manner. CVWD also strives towards its vision to secure sustainable water supplies and ensure infrastructure reliability, while furthering our commitment to accountability, transparency, and cost effectiveness.
All right, thank you for that great video, and welcome back to those who've joined us. You are in the Crescenta Valley Water District virtual town hall meeting. As I shared before, I'm Justin Glover with Communications Lab, Our team is assisting Crescenta Valley Water District with community outreach, and I'll be your moderator for today's meeting. Before we get into the meeting, I want to just go over some housekeeping items, and then I'll be bringing up your speakers for today. I want to let you know that the meeting today is being recorded. And also, I want to share overall, this meeting is for you, and we want you to participate. So during the presentation, all the cameras and mics will be turned off, but we will open those up at the end of the presentation during the Q&A session. So we'll recognize you using the raise hand feature. But if you think of a question during the presentation, go ahead and jot that down or place it in the Q&A, and we will address it at the end of the meeting. This meeting is also being captioned. You can click on the captions button in your Zoom interface to activate that feature. And also, if you have any tech support, our Zoom tech is on the screen there. Martin, you can reach out to him for any problems. So now let's introduce, we've got a slide with a list of our presenters, and I'll just go through who you're going to hear from today. You're going to hear from Nem Ochoa, who's our general manager. You're going to hear from James Lee, who will be given the bulk of our presentation. I'm Justin Glover, and then Christy Colby and Brooke Yared, they're going to be assisting during the Q&A portion. So with that, let's go ahead and welcome up Nem Ochoa, our general manager, for a welcome message.
Hello and welcome. I'm Nem Ochoa, General Manager at Crescenta Valley Water District. I've been in this role since 2018, and I'm grateful to be in this position to serve this wonderful community. I am a native of Southern California, a water resource engineer by training, and a registered civil engineer with the state of California. That means our mission to deliver safe and reliable drinking water is of the utmost importance to me. Today you're going to hear a presentation from our team about how we're keeping our promise to the community and how we're planning for the future, which also means planning for rising infrastructure costs and the impacts of climate change. You hear about our aging water and sewer infrastructure, some of which goes back to the 1950s, prompting a need for a deliberate plan and the execution of that plan to ensure reliable water service is achievable now and in the future. You hear about where your water comes from and how the district is able to keep our faucets running, toilets flushing, and our fire hydrants pressurized, ready to provide fire suppression 24/7. You'll also hear about a plan to fund the costs directly associated with replacing old pipelines and ensuring our water system can be relied on to provide safe drinking water under all scenarios and support an emergency response in the wake of a wildfire or an earthquake. This funding plan is critical to the mission of the district and will be asking the community for its valued input. We're glad you joined us today, and at the end of our presentation, I'll be joined by our team to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And now it is time to get into our presentation. I'd like to bring up James Lee.
Thank you, Nem and Justin. I'd also like to welcome you all here today, and to those of you, some familiar faces in the crowd, I'd like to welcome you back. My name is James Lee. I'm the Director of Finance and Administration here at Crescenta Valley Water. I've been here since 2017, so a little bit longer than Nem. And I come from a finance background. I was a consultant for many years, but my training, my education, and really my passion, what led me to public service is public policy. And when we talk about policy, the common question that always comes up is, how do we provide the most benefit for the public, in this situation, the community? And the reason why I'm here today is because if we're going to make an ask to the community, especially one of financial consideration, and today what we're talking about specifically is infrastructure reliability, and more specifically pipelines, then it behooves us to have that conversation with you, the public, to explain exactly what it is, why are we doing this, why the route that we're proposing is the best route, and explain the steps along the way. Okay, so who are we and what do we do? So mission, to provide quality water and wastewater services to the Crescenta Valley community in a dependable and economically responsible manner. Vision, so secure sustainable water supplies and ensure infrastructure reliability while furthering our commitment to accountability, transparency, and cost effectiveness. So what informs our mission and vision, right? So in our case, it's the strategic plan. The latest iteration was completed last year in 2022, and you see here two of the most overarching goals. So reliable water and wastewater service, ensure infrastructure reliability and performance. There you see it again. It's basically straight out of the vision statement. And goal, fiscal responsibility, and kind of under that is to improve financial stability. So this document, it's on our website along with all manner of other documents. We have, policy, planning, engineering, finance, budget, all type of documents. And I encourage you all to go take a look. Where did this all start? The district was formed, just a quick history. The district was formed in 1950. It was a combination of seven private water companies. So for those of you whose families have been in the community for a number of generations, you might recognize some names like Cresta Heights Mutual Water Company, Dunsmore Canyon Water Company, Mountain Water Company. And these all came together, like I said, in 1950 under a public charter from the state of California to become Crescenta Valley Water District. It was called Crescenta Valley County Water District at the time, but it's CVWD today. And then in 1979, that's when we added the wastewater collection services. And here's some interesting documents that we dusted off from the archives. I believe what we're looking at here is well-logged data from the 1920s. I just thought it'd be interesting for you to take a look at. But the district's come a long way since then, right? There's a nice and welcome to the community that was installed several years ago on Foothill Boulevard. And there's a lot of moving parts to make sure that we can supply clean, reliable water. So like I said, there's a lot of moving parts, and let's start with water supply. And we're going to kind of go through these quickly, but just again, so you get an idea of what we're talking about. And a lot of you will know this just because, as you know, with the falling availability of water, with drought, things like that, it's been all over the news, both in the state and nationally, but particularly in the state and really in the Southern California basin as well. But we have three primary sources of water. First one is the State Water Project. It comes down from the Sierras and the Sacramento Delta. And if you trace that line down there in that picture there, you can see the pipeline goes all the way from up there, all the way down to Metropolitan, which is our wholesaler, and through Foothill, and comes to us. We have a secondary source, the Colorado River, also been in the news a lot. So you have Lake Mead, it falls down through Hoover Dam, makes its way all the way over here. That's our second source. And then we have our groundwater. So going to this next slide here, here's some pictorial representations. That's the State Water Project right there on the left. You see Lake Mead dammed up by Hoover Dam right there. And then over here, that's our community. And so that purple circle right there, that's right along Honolulu. And just topographically, that's kind of where the water will percolate into our basins. And so it's just most advantageous for our wells to be there. It's most optimized there. And that's why they're there. All right, so what do we do with all this water supply? We got to treat this water. We got to make sure it's safe to drink. Hopefully it tastes pretty good. We think it tastes pretty good. But there's a number of ways to do this. We can either remove things from the water, we can blend it with other sources of water, or we can treat it, right? Where we have chemicals, a number of chemicals that we put in there, and we put just the right amount so that by the time it gets up to the reservoirs and down to your tap, the most of those chemicals are gone, right? So that it tastes good and the water is perfect. And there's a lot that goes into this, right? There's pictures, those are analyzers right there. They're set up all throughout our distribution system. There's sensors, there's alarms, everything that really measures everything to the most minute tolerances. And all of this, basically on a weekly, monthly basis, there are just hundreds of samples that are taken of water. And they're sent to laboratories across the state. And then the results are sent to the state itself. The state signs off on these. And ultimately, at the end of the year, we produce an annual water quality report that you probably receive in the mail every year. It's also posted on our website. This page right here with all these numbers is just one page from that. But you can appreciate the amount of effort that goes into making sure that you have safe, reliable, good tasting water. Once we treat that water, it's got to go somewhere. And so we're talking about water storage. And the district has 17 reservoirs, believe it or not. You don't really see them. There's 14 of them are steel, 3 of them are concrete. Together, they can hold 17.5 million gallons of water. And we always try to maintain them at a minimum where we can supply at least 5 to 7 days of water in the event of emergency. We've worked in the recent past on seismically retrofitting our reservoirs. I believe most of them are, I think 10 of them are seismically retrofitted. And right now we're actually working on a program such that in the event of a fire or earthquake, we can have every resident assigned to a specific reservoir so that they can then have a reliable source of potable water in the event of emergency, right? Because in those situations, whether I can get water or not is the last thing that I want to worry about. At the same time, being able to store that much potable water in all of our homes it's kind of a big task. You have to imagine like all of these five-gallon jugs that we're keeping at home just for this kind of event, and then refreshing them and all that kind of stuff. So now we need to get the water from the reservoirs to the homes, and there's three primary components to this. The pictures there, those are booster pumps. These are big engines, a lot of horsepower, and they basically pump the water from where it's treated all the way up to the reservoirs. And the reservoirs, of course, are going to be higher in elevation so that they can use gravity to flow down. So that's one component. Another component is what's called SCADA. So SCADA is a technology where our system operators can monitor the system 24/7, not only from a water quality standpoint, but water pressure, where it's going, and all of that, right? How much are our reservoirs filled, and we really call that the brains of the operation. And the third component to that is pipelines. It's the water distribution system. And there's about 95 miles of pipeline to maintain, right? Like I bet you didn't know that there were that many miles of pipeline underneath the ground in our community. Now, pipelines are at the heart of what we're talking about today. So please hold on to that thought for a minute. I alluded to emergency preparedness earlier, and this is such a critical component to our service, not only to individual homes, but to first responders within the community and regionally. And this is a whole separate conversation. We can spend hours on this topic. But just as an overview, we're continuously maintaining a whole myriad of assets just to make sure that in the event of an emergency, we can provide service, right? So we have a number of generators, both portable and stationary. We mentioned the seismic retrofitting, all the analyzers. We have a plan. We have an emergency response plan in place. One of the unsung heroes in terms of all this is fire hydrants. You see them all around the place, and we take them for granted. We have 651 fire hydrants in our service area, and we have 2 fire stations servicing our service area. And our maintenance crew pretty much spend all year maintaining these fire hydrants so that they're functional, they have the right amount of pressure, they can open up, the valves that service them, they can open up, they're working, and all that stuff. Customer support. And when we start talking about customer support, there is a whole ecosystem of service that goes into, we talk about, we get the water, we treat it, we store it, we get it to your tap. That's all one process, but what happens after that? What happens when you have a question about your billing? What happens when there's a leak? Our maintenance crew are available 24/7, very fast response time. And because community stewardship, that's an aspect of it too, right? You see us out there, National Night Out. You see us out there for the Hometown Country Fair. That's Wendy Holloway there at the Hometown Country Fair. She's since retired, and we miss her. But again, kind of like emergency preparedness, that's a whole nother discussion. But just wanted to share that so you understand the 360 of the service that we provide. What we're looking to fund here is infrastructure reliability, but it's specifically pipelines. And why is this so important? The reason is because it's really simple. The reason is because pipelines really represent the backbone of our infrastructure, right? We could have all of the water in the world. It could be treated to the highest standards, which it is anyway. But without the pipelines, there's no water going to the homes. So for some of you who have been in the community for some time, you may have heard of there's this bridge. It's a little bit north of Azusa. It's built in the 1930s, and it's unfinished, and it's called the Bridge to Nowhere. And it's kind of analogous to that, right? You can have all this infrastructure, all this great water, but without the pipeline, it's not going anywhere, and we're not sustaining life, we're not providing health and human safety, which is part of our basic mission here. So and the distribution system, it's not just about each endpoint, which represents each home. It's actually part of a whole system, right? As an example, for example, we could have a reservoir that goes down for whatever reason. Maybe it's getting recoded or rehabbed or whatever the case may be. We could have a valve that's broken, so it gets stuck because there's rust or it's been in the ground too long, it just breaks off or something. But if you have a distribution system that's reliable, you can actually work around these issues. And so that's why it's paramount that we be able to maintain this distribution system, which is made up of pipelines. So we've always recognized this need, right? And it's always been a balance of the financial impact to community versus how much can we defer this maintenance? How much can we defer, actually really wrapping our arms around infrastructure reliability? But in 2019, thereabouts, there came a point where we just, we couldn't not do more anymore, if you know what I mean. And so we really had to sit down, sharpen our pencils, and come up with a plan. And that's all we did. It's a difficult conversation. You can imagine having deferred things for decades. That's not an easy conversation. I'm sharing a couple of tables here. I'm not going to go into it. The point of it is really to just show you that there's a lot of smart people, at the district who are crunching numbers and really figuring things out, looking at this sideways, upside down, left and right, right? For example, we broke the pipeline down by age, by number of leaks, by size. What's not on here is the material, the kind of soil compaction, all types of variables we looked at. And we came up with, we said, so one of the results of that was, what is a pipeline age? And if you look at that third bar, the biggest bar there, most of our pipe in the ground is about 50 to 60 years old. And we have a significant amount that's older than that, right? So 70 years old, 7 years plus. I think our oldest pipe is it's either 92 or 96 years old. And that's directly a function of how a lot of our country was built. A lot of this country's infrastructure, at least west of the Mississippi, was done in the 1950s and 60s, right? And so that infrastructure is coming due. And the issue with this is the average useful life of a pipe is 75 years. And what we found is that we were on basically a 200-year plan. So you can imagine, not only are we not catching up, we continue to fall behind, and not at an insignificant rate, but a pretty significant one, which is why we had to do something about it. So we talked about it, and we said, what are we going to do this? Because again, going back to our mission and vision, we can't not do something about it. So we said, all right, what is a plan that is going to get us back on track within a reasonable amount of time? And by reasonable, we're talking 20 years. It's a 20-year plan. And if you take the 95, we talked about how there's 95 miles of pipe in the ground. For us to get on a 75-year plan, we need to, and we're going to get into some numbers here, but we need to get at least, if we want to break even, it's 1.27. Let's call it 1.25 miles of pipe. But if we're going to get ahead, we have to do more than that. And so the only way to do that is to actually ramp it up over time. And you can kind of see, it goes up kind of like a pyramid and it comes back down. And there's a couple of different reasons why we did it this way. Number one is we need to build up our reserves, our cash basically, to be able to pay for this, because we can't just go out there and pay for it today. We got to actually build it up. And number two, as a matter of logistics, this community, this district prides itself in being able to replace pipeline with minimal impact to the community. For example, there's a pipeline in Orange that we just deferred because it would impact Monte Vista Elementary too much, right? So this is a plan that we came up with, right? So we did this, and we made some difficult decisions. I mentioned before that a lot of infrastructure had been deferred in the past because of the sensitivity to the financial impact on customers. But back in 2020, after the completion of the study, which by the way, it's called the Infrastructure Funding and Reliability Plan, and it's kind of a mouthful, so we call it the roadmap. But in order to realize that roadmap, we actually raised rates by a pretty significant amount, right? It was right now we're in the second year of a 3-year rate schedule of 8% each year. We're looking at, I believe, 7% for the next 3 years after that, and 6% for 3 years after that. These are difficult decisions. These are difficult messages to share with the community, but we did the right thing. The thing is, since then, the goalposts have moved, right? I think it almost goes without saying what's happened, because all of us, whether it's in our households or if we own businesses or in our own workplaces, we understand what's happened in the last couple of years. It's been a confluence of just everything. We had basically uncontrolled, unbridled inflation. We had a pandemic. We had supply chain shortages, labor shortages, significant increases in costs. And so that all trickles down. And what's going on is that we are able to do, we're not able to do as much. The dollar just doesn't go as far, right? So that's a challenge. We talked about the opportunities. And so what comes out of this challenge is it's an opportunity. And let's remember our mission and vision again, a big piece of which is infrastructure reliability. And Ned mentioned an implicit promise that we make to the community, and we wouldn't be fulfilling our promise to you of planning for the future and making sure there's infrastructure reliability if we didn't address this issue, right? And also, if water isn't available for properties, these properties, you can imagine their usefulness and ultimately their value declines. And it's something, the availability of water, especially until now, because pipelines have resided within their useful life of 75 years, is something that it's easy to take for granted. But we don't want to be in a situation where our community can't access water, right? The properties can't access water. So again, none of these things should happen, right? And this is where we're coming from when proposing a dedicated source of funding for pipelines through the property tax rule. There's also an opportunity that's presented here, and that's revenue stability. So much of the district's revenue is tied to water sales, but a lot of how water is used is left to Mother Nature. And the reliability of our system, the availability of water to the properties, they shouldn't be tied to variables like precipitation and temperature, things that are completely out of our control. Supporting our finances with a fixed, dependable revenue stream means we can avoid the goalposts that we talked about, the goalposts that move, like they've moved over the last couple of years, and as they have during the past drought cycles. So let's talk about the plan for the future. This is the same schedule that we had looked at before, just as a reminder in terms of where we started from. And this was 2019, 2020. And if you look at the bottom table there, this is just so we can put into clearer focus what kind of numbers we're talking about. And the cost here is 3.3 million to 7.6 million in pipelines only. This is the plan that was approved by the board during the budget season in 2021. And when you look at the linear feet, that's going to be more than 1.25 miles, because now we're starting to catch up. And here's that same table again here. And the reason is so that we can compare against this next table. So when those goalposts move, right, when we have the pandemic, the supply chain shortages, the massive inflation, all of that stuff, the conservation, I forgot to mention, we're coming out the tail end of a historic drought, and water sales fell on top of that. So in November of 2022, staff and the board, we basically came back to the drawing board and said, look, we can't continue with the roadmap plan as we had originally devised in 2019, because if we do that, we're just going to run ourselves in the ground and be insolvent. And it's like being in between a rock and a hard place. We can't do that either, right? So we had to recalibrate and said, what are we going to do? So if you look at that bottom table there, the one in green, and you look at the bottom line there in miles, the cost goes down, and of course, the associated number of linear feet, the miles goes down with it. And if you look at those numbers, remember that number 1.27 or 1.25 miles, we have to meet that. We have to at least meet that just to not fall more behind than we are now. And when you look at those numbers, it's 1.1, 1.02, 0.74, and we're definitely not meeting our mission here, right? So that's where we are. And that's where we are, and that's why we are talking about an additional source of revenue. Again, it would be a charge on the property roll. And when we do that, we have to come up with a defensible reason for how we come up with that charge, right? And so here's that same table here, it's in green. And what we did was we said, okay, we have three options. We can say we're going to do something about it. We can say we're going to do something more about it, or we can say we're just going to solve the problem. And the reason why we have three is because, and this is kind of where the community comes in too, in terms of how important is this issue to you. We basically took the first 3 years and said, what is the average cost of that? What between 2023 to 2025, and the cost of pipeline replacement over those 3 years is $2.7 million. If we do it over 4-year average, because we're ramping up, the numbers going to naturally go up, it's about $3.5 million. And if we do 5 years, it's going to be $4 million. These are not insignificant numbers, but these are the numbers. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the plan. And we have 3 plans, but let's just start with the status quo. We talk about, and there's 2 lines here, and the red and the red and the black. And what we need to keep in mind here is a balance between financial impact versus actually getting ahead in terms of our deferred infrastructure and making it reliable, making our pipelines reliable, right? So if we were to move ahead with even the haircut scenario, I'll call it, which is that green table, which is the one where we had to scale back our plan. If we were to do even that today with our current finances, we'd basically run out of money by 2026. Obviously not an option. That's a non-negotiable, right? At this point, hopefully we can understand that not doing something about the infrastructure is also not a plan. That's not part of the plan. But we have to start somewhere, and that's why we want to talk about the status quo. So let's move on to solutions. Here, we're going to look at, this is the baseline, kind of the 3-year, the lower plan, if you will. And if you look at the red and black lines, now, at least we're not running into the ground. We're not running out of money by 2026, but there's still quite a bit of gap there. And I want to pause here to talk about kind of why it's important that those 2 lines are closer to each other. And it actually has to do with the infrastructure itself, with the pipelines themselves. And I think it's a good time to talk about the difference between proactive and reactive maintenance. I'm sure many of you in the community in recent memory can remember there was a massive break on Pennsylvania Avenue a couple of years ago. We recently had one on Ocean View. When these things happen, other than the actual interruption of service and the debris and everything, all that stuff happening, the noise, there's a huge cost differential. And it's estimated that at minimum the cost to repair something during an emergency is at least 3 times, if not 5, 7, 10 times more. And the reason for that is because you can imagine, it's usually, these things always happen at 2 a.m. for some reason, but it's the middle of the night, you got to mobilize a crew. Contractors, we're at their mercy, basically. We have to stop the leak. If you can kind of visualize with me, sometimes these pressures can get, 100 PSI or more. Sometimes it takes hours just to get the clamp on, just to stop the water from spraying everywhere in the first place. It's very difficult, right? You have sinkholes, cavitation, all manner of things. And so we really, really want to get ahead of that. And in a sense, for every dollar that we put in, we're actually almost getting out 2 or 3 or more dollars, right? So I just wanted to explain that. But that's the 3-year plan. And there it is highlighted there. Okay, so let's move on to the 4-year plan. And you can see right off the bat here. So first of all, that black line, it's not dipping below 0. That's a good sign. It's getting closer to the red line, and that's very good. But again, the most important thing here is we try to get ahead of this as much as we can, right? Even if we do this we're still going to have main breaks, right? It's going to happen. The idea is we want to drastically reduce the number of those kind of main breaks going into the future. All right. And so there's a 4-year plan that's highlighted at $3.5 million. And let's move on to the 5-year plan. So here, this is where we start seeing that black line actually start to approximate that red line, right? This is financial health. This is infrastructure health, and this is health for your property, our community, emergency response, things like that. And there it is highlighted there, the 5-year average at $4 million. So, okay, $64,000 question. How does this affect me? This is probably why you came here, right? To understand this and provide input. So here you see a table. It's called meter ratios. And really what this does is it kind of breaks down what the cost, or it differentiates between different meter sizes. Now, this community is, for the most part, it's residential. And the vast majority of meters are 3/4 inch meters. So you can see there about 7,000 out of the 8,200 water service connections we have are 3/4 inch. The 1-inch ones, they're usually the newer properties. They're usually a lot bigger. Usually the contractor or the person building the home said, I want a private fire line. And then when you have the 1.5, 2-inch, these are the big HOAs, the condominium complexes. And then the 3 and 4-inch ones are the big institutional meters, like the Caltrans, maybe some schools, things like that. Okay, but by and large, we're talking about this 3/4 inch one. And you may wonder, what is AWWA? What are these, what are these numbers here? So AWWA, it's the preeminent association in the country. It's American Water Works Association, and they have these best practices. And so when financial considerations are developed, when analyses are developed, these are the ratios that are used by and large throughout the nation. And so, but the reason why these ratios matter is because it's the proportionate share of whichever plan we go with. So, and by the way, staff is going to recommend to the board the greater option, the $4 million option, because we feel that that is a responsible thing to do. And when you look at that, you can see highlight here, that translates to, so if you were to divide $4 million amongst all of the meters, and then you kind of allocate them according to these ratios, for the vast majority of customers, for the 3, 4, and 5-year plan, we're talking about a range on your property tax bill annually between $273.62 all the way up to $404.30. So how is this going to appear on my property tax bill? So we have a couple of samples of property tax bills from our community. In this case, this is actually one of our employees, which was kind enough to provide for us. And so most people, when they pay their property tax bill these days, they just kind of go onto the county website and pay it. They don't see all this detail. But if you still get this in the mail and you like to look at it, this is what it looks like. You just want to take a few seconds to go over the parts of it. But and this property here, so in our community, last I checked, the median assessed value or kind of the market value that it's assessed based on is about 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So let's just say about $1.2 million. So this is a little bit less than that, right? You can see the assessed values at the bottom. There's about 800,000. And there's 2 major categories other than the actual property tax for your specific property. There's 2 categories. One is voted indebtedness. And usually that's things like schools is the most, and people will vote on these, right? This community voted on community colleges and the Unified School District at some point. And so you see those charges there. If you look below that, there's direct assessments. And this is a category that we're proposing to put it on. You can see right off the bat, we would be the biggest charge on there. We also believe that water is probably one of the most important things that you could have. You see some other water-related things there. Those are not related to Crescendo Valley. They have to do with stormwater. They have to do with metropolitan and things like that. But here you can really see exactly what it would look like for you. So let's move on to this other one. And this one is actually my friend who lives in the district. And I apologize for kind of the fuzzy resolution. So he's doing well for himself. The assessed value for his property is $2.3 million, and the resultant property tax bill is $26,000. but it's a similar setup. So certain things are a percentage of the actual assessed value. Certain things are just fixed charges. So in our case, for example, what we would propose is not a percentage of the property. It's just it'd be a fixed amount for each property. Okay, and if there are any questions about this, we can certainly talk about this during our Q&A. So we're nearing the conclusion of my presentation, and thank you for bearing with. But let's just review some next steps. So we have our talk today. We're going to be soliciting your opinion, your input, perhaps some ideas on how to move forward. We're going to be presenting it to the board on April 11th, along with revenue requirements. And by the way, revenue requirements, that's just another way of saying, do we want that, the lower, the medium, or the higher option? Like I said, staff will be presenting the $4 million option and a review draft of the Prop 218. Prop 218, that's a law that was passed in the 90s, and it has to do with anytime we're going to raise, the rates or something like that, then we need to put it before the constituents so that they have an opportunity to weigh in on that. We're going to send the Prop 218 notices, if the board approves, on the 25th, and then the public hearing as of now is scheduled for June 13th after the requisite 45-day waiting period. I want to go back to this bullet here that was skipped called Develop Bill Assistance Program. So for those of you who may not be aware, the district has actually maintained what's called a low income assistance program for a while. And what that is for people whose incomes qualify, the district actually pays for 20% of the bill, both the water and the wastewater. Now, we've had staff and the board, we've had a number of discussions on this property tax charge over the last several months. But one of the ideas, and just sneak peek into how governance works, you have the boards, but you also have these committees where we can have more in-depth workshops. And the committee members in the finance committee, one of their ideas was, well, if we're going to do this and we can make sure that we're financially resilient, we can make sure that we're doing the right thing for the community, upholding our promise to make sure we can deliver water to the properties. What else can we do, right? And so the idea on the table now, and we're actively researching and analyzing this as we speak, is to transition the low income discount program to just a more general bill assistance program. So it's one thing if you're like my friend whose bill is $26,000, might not notice it as much, $400. But if you're somebody whose property's been in the family for 20, 30 years, and your property tax bill is, let's say, $2,000, then $400, that's a pretty good chunk of your entire property tax bill. What do you do with that? So in order to do that, there's a couple ideas on the table. We can either expand the budget, the program itself, for a bill assistance program. We can increase the income limit so that more people can apply and qualify. We can actually increase the amount that we assist with from 20% to something higher than that. And so we're looking at county roll data. We basically have everybody's assessed values to see, okay, how many of these bills fall within 10,000 or 5,000 or whatever the case may be, so that we can right size a program and really work with the community on this. So that concludes my end of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Justin here. Thank you for coming here today. Like I said, all of us here are very passionate about this. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, James. We really appreciate that. Now it is time to get into our Q&A session. And before we get started, I just want to, bring up the panel. So everybody bring your video on. All of our participants, we ask that everybody be respectful. And we ask that everyone, give everybody a chance to ask a question before you ask a follow-up question, so that everybody has a chance to at least ask one question. And then we'd also like to keep the discussion on the issues that we've discussed today. So if you have another topic that you're interested in on the Water District, we ask that you share that with our folks via email or via the hotline we're going to show at the end of the meeting, rather than bring it up today. So let's go ahead and dig into the Q&A. We're going to do this one of two ways. You can raise your hand using the raise hand function, and then we will ask you to unmute yourself and ask your question verbally. or if you would rather just type your question into the Q&A chat area, then we will read it off and answer it here. And Christy is going to help me direct the questions as they come in. So, who would like to ask a question or share anything? Don't be shy. Now is the time to do it. James, you may have done so well that nobody needs to ask a question.
It's too kind, Justin. Thank you. And while you're thinking your questions up, I just want to invite everybody here, whether it's tonight or some other time, and looking at the participant list, there are actually quite a few of you who have already called in, scheduled conversations, and we've been happy to have those. So it's an open door here. We're a community organization. The dynamic with this agency is different than a lot of the other water districts out there. You can literally walk to our door and demand our attention. So like I said, we enjoy that and we really welcome that. So please consider that as well.
Okay, we have a hand raised from Richard Lyons. So Richard, we're going to ask you to unmute yourself.
There, can you hear me?
Welcome. Yes, welcome. Ask your question.
Hey, thank you. Were we not told when they raised our rates by 7.776% over the next 4 years? Were we not told by CV Water that part of that reason was for the infrastructure?
And I think we'll defer to James for that answer.
Okay, sure. Welcome back, Mr. Lyons. Good to see you or hear from you. Thank you for the question. That's a very important question because you're absolutely right. We did. And I had mentioned earlier tonight that we had made that ask of the community for this specific reason, for the backbone of our infrastructure. And the other thing we talked about was that the goalposts have moved, right? With the pandemic, the supply chain, high costs, drought conservation, drop in sales. And so this is that other hard conversation that we're bringing to the district. And part of the effort with reaching out to the public is not only to get your input, but also hopefully, through this conversation, the community can better understand and appreciate where we're coming from and why it's so important. And this is not just a district thing. This is it really is about the community. It's about your property. It's about how your property is going to serve future generations as well. So that's exactly what this conversation is about. So thank you for your question, and be happy to talk more offline as well.
And to follow up, have we also not received an abundance of water this year that would save CV Water a lot of money, that we wouldn't need to import as much water because of the rainfall? I mean, this is a record year like no other. They're saying that it's unprecedented, that we haven't had this much rain, and hopefully CV has captured a lot of this water so that will they not have extra reserves to go towards infrastructure?
So fall has been absolutely outstanding this year, and it is record rainfall, the most we've had so far since 2003, 2004. However, the time of percolation it'll take so that we can be able to retrieve that is a minimum of 12 months, but usually closer to 18 months until our wells will see that. And even at that point, when we start recovering our basin, it's at the lowest it's been. It's historic low. It will take more than just this 1 year what we saved to replenish it enough. It will slowly reduce our cost of over imported water. We will always purchase imported water for the time being due to water quality issues also, but not enough water savings to fund capital improvement.
Who else would like to ask a question? Raise your hand or place it in the Q&A. And we are going to show a contact slide at the end of this presentation. If you don't want to ask your question here, we'll tell you how to do that offline as well. In addition, as James mentioned, and Martin, our Zoom tech, can we go back to the next steps slide? And feel free, Christy or James, to elaborate. But there are other opportunities in addition to tonight where you can make your voice heard.
So yes, when we have that next step slide, we're happy to see you all here tonight. And whether it was our newspaper article or email blast, we will be producing more information. Please follow up on our website. There's some handouts for you there. This presentation will be there if you'd like to review, along with the recording at a later date. If you want to be notified of meetings and you saw this in the newspaper, please, on the front page of our website at the bottom, you can sign up for our email list so that you will receive emails about this information. And we ask you, please, again, to share this with your neighbors, with your friends, so everyone gets an opportunity to participate. As we move forward, there will be a notice that you'll receive in the mail. It will go to every property owner and person that uses water. So you'll be notified in mail also on your opportunity to participate and your opportunity to comment to the board directly. And I do see there's some more questions.
Yeah, we just got a couple in, and one of these we got in a previous session, so good question. We have one from Tina Lowenthal and one from Eric Gorman, kind of related. Are the annual charges on our property tax bill in perpetuity, or will this just be for a set period of time? And then Tina Lowenthal is asking for clarification. This is not a change to the bill that you get every month from the water district, but your property tax bill. So if you could clarify that. So how long is the charge on the property tax bill, and where does this charge appear, monthly bill or property tax?
So,
Yeah.
James, yes, thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take those. Mr. Gorman, nice to see you here tonight. Thank you for the question. So the short answer is mostly yes. Perpetuity, that's a long time. We talked about a 20-year plan just to catch up. I think what we're thinking is it's most likely, it hasn't been approved like that, and that's not the approval we're going to seek. But just to be kind of transparent about the direction that we're heading in, you can appreciate that it would take a sustained effort over a number of years to get there. So the plan would be, I would imagine at least 5-10 years or something along those lines. Hopefully that answers your question, and if it doesn't, please follow up. Ms. Lowenthal, I don't think we're acquainted. Thank you for your question as well. In terms of the bill, it's a separate charge, as mentioned. And so if you're a property owner, you will see that. If you're a tenant, depending on the landlord situation, usually the landlord will pay for it, but they may pass it through to the tenant. The bill itself that you receive on a bi-monthly basis, that itself won't change. That said, let me just add a little bit of context, which is, at a certain point, right? And I'm not making any promises here whatsoever, because, it's not my place to speak out of turn. But I would imagine that if we get to a place where we're actually starting to catch up and we're establishing financial resiliency, I would hope and I would expect that at some point that the actual rate increases on the bill side would diminish over time. Of course, we're going to have to keep up with standard inflation, but we wouldn't be in catch-up mode. We would be more in maintenance mode. So hopefully that answers your question, and please follow up if you have any follow-ups.
Thank you, James. And we have another question from Gerald Alexander, not on today's topic, but I'll go ahead and share it with the team. This is a PFAS related question. And I know there's going to be probably more information that the district's going to be sharing on this in the future. But Gerald Alexander asks, do you anticipate the need to provide additional water treatment to meet the new water standards that will be implemented to address issues such as waste generally classified as forever chemicals?
Okay, so at this time, any of the plans that we have do not include such treatment. The district is just beginning to journey into PFAS testing or forever chemicals or the Gen X chemicals. Because we were not part of the initial testing due to just the surrounding areas being mostly residential. Because those regulations aren't fully promulgated and the advisory limits are not set, I would not be able to answer that question until more towards the end of the year when I've completed my testing and the state has actually approved the limits that are in draft form.
But safe to say, folks are going to get more information as this develops, and that'll be being delivered to them and on your website. Okay. Do we have last chance for questions before we move to close? And what I'd like to do is, can we invite Nim for any closing comments that he would like to give?
Thanks, Justin. Thank you for coordinating, helping us get through tonight and this afternoon. I think we've had a great outreach event at noon as well, in addition to the 6 o'clock town hall meeting. Thank you all customers for attending. It is really important for us to get your feedback, and it shows how important these issues are to us when you attend these events and attend our board meetings. There's been a lot of changes at the district, as you may imagine, with all the outreach we're doing, the strategic planning, and bringing these issues to the community because they're important. It's important to our mission, to our vision. The board is very deliberate about being transparent. So is staff, developing partnerships and following through with our commitment to this community. So this is where it's all coming from. And as James had mentioned, we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't provide this information to this community. I also want to mention that from an operating cost, we've done a lot in terms of being more efficient, saving money. We've reduced our workforce from 32 employees down to 26. So we're doing a lot more than we've ever done with a lot less people. So again, we're doing everything we can to reduce operating costs. But the discussion tonight is about infrastructure reliability, and our ability to serve this community now and in the future with reliable infrastructure, which is aging. So thanks again, everyone. And we look forward to receiving more comments. As staff had mentioned, please reach out to us if you have any questions and attend our board meetings. The next one is next Tuesday, and we hope to see you there. Thank you.
And Nim, thank you. And we're going to take one more question. We had Hildreth Anderson ask, as part of the long-term infrastructure, why not drill more production wells versus buying water? Then you'd only pay for treatment and well pumping. Also, what are you doing to increase storage, such as building another water tank? So trying to get at, is there some other cost savings that the district can find? And then before you answer that, we did have another PFAS question from Gerald. But Gerald, I'm going to ask that you follow up with Christy directly via email, since that is PFAS is a whole different topic that I'm sure that there'll be more coming on that. Nope, I think we lost you there, Christy.
I'll probably tag team this one with Brooke as far as drilling more production wells versus buying water. So the Verdugo Basin is where we pump our water from. And it's one of those basins that is adjudicated. There's a limit to what they call the safe yield. So the safe yield that we can take out of the basin is by court order, and it is shared with Glendale. So even if we could pump more water, which just for instance, right now, we literally cannot even pump the amount that they consider the safe yield because there isn't enough water. But let's just say there was, and it was absolutely full, there would still be a limit into which we are allowed to pump. As far as storage is not really an issue for us. We have adequate storage to meet all health and safety supplies. Creating more storage would not necessarily lower any of our overall costs. Storage is your storage amount is determined by the Department of Division of Drinking Water for health and safety standards. And again, we are more than adequate on our storage needs. But Brooke, if you would like to add anything to that I've missed.
That was a great answer. I will say, like, a lot of our CIP dollars, rather than going into new reservoirs, are going into, rehabilitating the current and existing reservoirs that we do have, making sure that, we increase their longevity over time. But otherwise, yeah, she's correct. There's only a certain amount of water in the aquifer. It can only produce a certain amount of water in a given time frame, and just increasing the amount of straws that you have drying from the aquifer doesn't necessarily increase the volume of water there. That being said, we really do want to drill additional wells in the district, but it is a large capital undertaking as well. So not only do you have to buy the property, find a site that's adequate, there are a lot of other costs and things associated with that. So we'd have to weigh the cost benefit analysis.
Thank you, Christy and Brooke. And at this time, I think we're going to move to close the meeting. Can we have the contact slide one more time for folks to be able to see that? If there's anything we didn't cover today and you want to get in touch with the district, there's an email address, phone number on that slide, as well as the website, and we invite you to go there. And with that, if there's nothing else from panelists, we will close our meeting tonight.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you to everyone.
Thanks everybody for your time.
Have a good night. Bye.
Right.